Welcome to the Graduated Thoughts Podcast.
You know, you probably have a really potent spiritual arsenal sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now.
Oh, absolutely. Just masquerading as dinner.
Right, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at your spice rack, you see, I don't know, a dash of cinnamon for your coffee or bay leaves for a stew, maybe some allspice.
Yeah. Standard grocery store stuff.
But when you step into the historical landscape of traditional African-American folk healing and hoodoo, that spice rack completely transforms. It's not just flavoring anymore.
No, it becomes a pharmacy and a defense system.
Yes, a literal toolkit for survival.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive.
Right. And to do that, we're pulling from an incredible stack of sources. We've got Hoodoo Herb and Root Magic, the Encyclopedia of Magical Herb. Yeah, plus African American Folk Healing, Jambalaya, and the Conjure Workbook. But I should probably state a quick caveat right up front.
Good idea.
While we are exploring the botanical mechanics of these historical practices, we're looking at their symbolic, practical, and cultural roles. We are definitely not giving out medical prescriptions here.
Right. Please don't use this as medical advice.
Exactly. We are just analyzing how marginalized people historically weaponized the natural world to, make sense of and survive their environment.
And what an environment it was. I mean, we are talking about taking everyday items, grocery store spices, backyard weeds, common legumes, and turning them into instruments of profound empowerment.
It's fascinating.
It really is. To understand how a simple bay leaf or a dandelion operates on that level, you kind of have to look at the American South as a historical crucible.
Yeah, massive blending of cultures.
Right. Like, you are likely already familiar with the foundational African concept of ash, that living soul force or spiritual voltage inherent in all things.
Right.
But when enslaved people were brought to the Americas, they were suddenly surrounded by an entirely alien flora.
Right. The plants they knew intimately from West and Central Africa simply did not grow in the damp soils of Virginia or the Carolinas.
Which must have been incredibly disorienting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this sparked a rapid, massive exchange of botanical knowledge with Native Americans out of sheer necessity.
Survival.
Exactly. And over time, as European grimoires and folk magic texts began circulating in the 19th century, those concepts were absorbed too.
So you end up with a highly dynamic, tricultural botanical system.
Yes, exactly.
And navigating that system heavily relies on something called the doctrine of signatures.
Oh, this is a crucial concept.
Right. For anyone who follows ethnobotany, you know the doctrine of signatures is this global belief that a plant's physical appearance, like its shape, color, or growth habit, dictates its use.
It is essentially nature's own user interface.
I love that analogy. It's like nature's own visual pun or color coding system. But the way it's applied in hoodoo is incredibly literal and vivid.
Well, it had to be. It functioned as a shared visual language across cultures that, initially, did not even share a spoken language.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, the idea is that the creator supposedly left a physical signature on the plant to broadcast its utility. So if a plant secretes a red sap, it is for blood ailments.
Okay, right.
Or if the roots are scaly and grasping, they are for holding on to money or holding on to a person.
Oh, wow. Do you have a concrete example from the sources to sort of ground this abstract idea?
Yeah, definitely. The sources offer a perfect example with deer's tongue.
Deer's tongue.
Yeah. Botanically, it is vanilla leaf. It's a low-growing plant that smells remarkably like vanilla and coumarin.
Yeah.
But its folk name comes from the fact that the leaf is shaped exactly like a tongue.
Okay, so following the doctrine of signatures, what does a tongue shape mean?
Because of that specific signature, root workers utilized it for eloquence.
Wait, really? Just because it looks like a tongue?
Exactly. If you were walking into a courtroom to face a judge, or if you were about to propose marriage, you would carry dried deer's tongue in your pocket.
Wow.
Yeah, perhaps rubbing it between your fingers. You are essentially carrying a physical tongue to lend spiritual power and pleasing speech to your own.
That associative logic is just brilliant. But before you can walk into court with eloquent speech or try to draw wealth or romance into your life, the sources point out there's a very strict order of operations in these traditions.
Yes, you cannot build a prosperous house on a spiritually corrupted foundation.
Exactly. You have to secure the perimeter. Cleansing and protection are always step one.
Always.
And the tools used to establish that safe boundary are just wonderfully practical. The sources detail how everyday chores were elevated to high spiritual defense.
Right, like sweeping.
Yes, take the broom. But not just any broom, specifically broom corn, which is a type of sorghum, completely different from European Scotch broom.
Oh, that's an important distinction.
Right, so sweeping the front porch with a sorghum broom wasn't just about clearing dust. It was a tactical spiritual sweeping to literally remove crossed conditions or jinxes from the home's entry points.
You're simultaneously cleaning the physical space and clearing the spiritual airwaves.
I love that. And you also see ingredients like boldo leaves being utilized here.
Yes, boldo is fascinating.
Boldo actually entered the hoodoo lexicon through Mexican curanderismo practices, right?
That's right. A worker would steep the leaves in the tea and sprinkle it around the baseboards and windowsills.
To create a barrier against ambient malice.
Exactly. Just securing the perimeter.
But what happens when ambient malice turns into a targeted attack? The sources provide a really specific tricultural recipe for turning back a deliberate spell or breaking a severe jinx.
Oh, this is one of my favorite examples of the cultural blending.
Right. It calls for combining patchouli, agrimony, and graveyard dirt.
This is where we see the underlying mechanics of the plants really coming into play. So agrimony is a European herb, and physically, it has these tiny clinging burrs. It is historically used in folk magic because those burrs symbolically catch and snag negative energy.
Like Velcro for jinxes.
Exactly, stopping a jinx in its tracks. Then you have patchouli,
Which smells amazing.
right, coming from India via trade routes.
Mhm.
It has an incredibly dense, heavy, earthy scent. In magical practice, it acts as a grounding wire.
So it takes that snagged negative energy and buries it in the earth so it harmlessly dissipates.
You got it.
Okay, wait. Agrimony and patchouli make sense botanically, but graveyard dirt.
I know.
To an outsider, that sounds like a Hollywood horror trope. It sounds malevolent.
Yeah, it is really easy to project those spooky tropes onto the practice.
Yeah.
But the mechanism here is deeply rooted in African ancestral veneration.
So it's not about zombies or curses.
Not at all. Graveyard dirt is not about causing harm. It is the ultimate form of protection.
How so?
In these cosmologies, the spirits of the dead, especially respected ancestors or fierce community leaders, remain active participants in the ecosystem of the living.
Oh, I see. So you are essentially drafting them for guard duty.
Precisely.
Yeah.
By taking a pinch of dirt from the grave of a protective ancestor, you are incorporating their specific ash into the recipe.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you are asking your great-grandmother, who fiercely protected her family in life, to form a spiritual wall around your house now.
So the agrimony catches the jinx, the patchouli grounds it, and the graveyard dirt provides the active ancestral intelligence overseeing the whole defense system.
Exactly. It's a highly sophisticated system.
It really is. So once that perimeter is secured and the ancestors have the watch, the focus historically shifts inward to the physical body.
Right, because surviving the 18th and 19th centuries as a marginalized person in the American South meant that formal medical care was either inaccessible or incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, herbalism wasn't just an alternative lifestyle choice like it might be for some today. It was a radical, essential form of self-determination.
Healing the community internally was just as important as warding off external jinxes. And the root doctors operated as brilliant environmental strategists.
They really treated the entire ecosystem of the patient, didn't they?
They did. Look at the popular cough-relieving tea detailed in the texts.
Oh, the one with mullein leaf, cherry bark, and horehound?
Yes. So mullein is a known expectorant, and cherry bark soothes the throat.
Which makes perfect medical sense.
But the inclusion of horehound is a fascinating conceptual leap.
Why is that?
Well, historically, horehound was utilized in much older folk magic as a protective ward against wild animals like feral dogs or wolves.
Wait, so why put it in a cough tea?
Because when applied to this specific medical tea, the root workers adapted the magic to fit a microscopic reality.
Oh, wow. So the germs and the infection are viewed as the wild animals invading the bodily perimeter.
Exactly. They are using a magical warding herb to fight a biological infection.
That is a seamless blending of the spiritual and the somatic. Like they were the original holistic practitioners.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But survival in this landscape often required aggressive internal cleansing too,
Yeah.
especially after a long, stagnant winter living on preserved foods.
Right. Which brings us to pokeweed. Or as the sources call it, poke salad.
Oh yes, poke salad.
The sources describe people harvesting the fresh, bright green spring shoots of the poke plant and boiling them down to eat.
Right.
It was considered a spring tonic, used to thin the blood and flush out the human machinery, so to speak.
Yeah, the preparation of pokeweed is a real testament to the deep life-or-death botanical knowledge these practitioners held.
Because it's not exactly safe, is it?
No, the young shoots, when boiled in multiple changes of water, act as a mild, stimulating laxative. But the mature root and the dark purple berries of the poke plant are highly toxic.
Wow, so you could not just forage blindly.
Not at all.
You had to know the exact season to harvest, the specific part of the anatomy to cut, and the chemical process of boiling out the toxins.
The margin for error was literally zero. This knowledge was hard-won, passed down through generations.
It really highlights how these healers were managing both the toxic threats of the natural world and harnessing its remedies at the same time.
Exactly.
So with the body healed and the house protected, the next priority was navigating the harsh economic realities.
Thriving, not just surviving.
Exactly. The sources are packed with curios and roots dedicated to prosperity, money drawing, and luck.
Because securing resources in a deeply unequal society was a constant spiritual pursuit.
Right. A prominent example from the texts is bayberry. Root workers highly valued the bark of the bayberry root to attract cash.
Often combining it in a small bag and activating it by reciting the 23rd Psalm.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That is a powerful activation code for an empty wallet.
It is, but there is a massive linguistic trapdoor here.
Oh, the bayberry versus barberry thing?
Yes. The texts explicitly warn practitioners not to confuse bayberry with barberry.
It is like a linguistic doctrine of signatures. Botanically, they're entirely different plants, but their names sound almost identical.
Right, but magically they are polar opposites.
How so?
Well, because barberry contains the word bar, its magical function is to literally bar or block enemies from your path.
Oh, wow. So if a practitioner accidentally slips barberry into a prosperity working instead of a bayberry,
They will effectively put a barricade in front of their own income.
that is wild. Words have so much power in this system. Even puns have power.
They really do.
I also noticed how heavily the prosperity workings rely on the absolute most mundane items imaginable. Like, we are talking about beans.
Oh, yes. Beans.
Black-eyed peas, tonka beans, mojo beans. They are universally considered lucky across these texts. Why is that? Why beans?
Well, when you view this through the lens of an agrarian society, the symbolism is bulletproof. A bean is essentially a dense nutritional battery.
Okay.
It represents stored potential, sustenance, and the literal spark of life that will multiply into a massive yield.
Oh, I get it. It is the physical embodiment of compound interest.
Precisely. By carrying a tonka bean or a mojo bean, you are carrying the conceptual seed of future wealth.
Asking your money to grow and multiply the way the seed does in the soil.
Exactly. You also see animal feed like alfalfa used to symbolize a bountiful harvest.
Or pyrite, right? Fool's gold.
Yes, used to physically mimic wealth and draw paying customers into a business.
It is all about mimicking the reality you want to manifest.
Exactly.
But humans are complex, and we crave more than just a full pantry and a safe house.
We do. We crave connection.
Yes. And the botanicals dedicated to love, fidelity, and the heart are arguably the most vivid in the entire tradition.
The heart is a chaotic landscape, and the botanicals mirror that. You have gentle drawing herbs, and then you have plants used for intense binding command.
Right. On the drawing side, you have curios like Adam and Eve roots.
Oh, a classic.
These are two distinct roots from an orchid plant. One is rounded, one is elongated, representing binary opposing forces.
Right.
You carry them together in a small bag to attract a mate, but the sources note they also serve to block amatory competitors.
It is like carrying an archetypal couple in your pocket to magnetize your own relationship.
I love that. You also see Damiana explicitly labeled in the texts as the love herb.
Yes, Damiana is interesting. It is a natural relactant, often brewed into a tea or added to a bath.
To lower inhibitions, right?
Yeah, to soothe anxiety and make someone physically and emotionally receptive to romance.
But the sources do not shy away from the darker, more aggressive side of love magic.
No, they don't.
When we look at binding work, things get really intense. Not weed, for example.
Again, we see the linguistic signature at play here, not weed.
Right.
It was used alongside highly personal items, like a target's unwashed clothing, their shoelaces, or a photograph.
And what would they do with it?
The practitioner would physically tie knots in the weed around these items to bind a lover's movements.
Wow. Essentially tethering them to the home.
Exactly.
You also see magnolia leaves physically sewn into the mattress of a marital bed to ensure fidelity, or roots slipped into a partner's tea to tie their affections down. I have to say, wait, tying someone's shoelaces with knotweed or sneaking herbs into their tea, that sounds a bit coercive, doesn't it? It feels almost desperate.
I completely understand that reaction. But it was desperate.
Yeah.
To really understand this, we have to look directly at the historical trauma of the era.
Okay.
We are talking about a period where families could literally be sold apart at an auction block without warning. Spouses were separated by force.
That's horrific.
And even post-emancipation, economic ruin frequently tore families apart as people had to travel endlessly just to find work.
Oh, I see. So spousal fidelity wasn't just about avoiding a broken heart or like maintaining a romance.
Not at all. It was about ensuring the primary wage earner stayed. It was about ensuring the family unit wasn't destroyed from the inside when outside forces were already attacking it relentlessly.
Wow, that puts a completely different spin on it.
Yeah. Exerting magical control over a partner's movements was a survival tactic designed to keep the family intact in a world that offered them absolutely no legal or social protections. The magic is heavy because the stakes were existentially high.
That context changes everything about how you view a handful of knotweed.
Yeah.
It is not a love potion, it is an anchor.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. But whether you are using mullein for a cough, bayberry for cash, or knotweed to keep your family together, the plants themselves are just the hardware, right?
Right. They have to be turned on.
And that brings us to the most famous roots in the tradition and the actual mechanics of the mojo bag.
The botanicals possess their own ash, but they require a structured environment and spiritual maintenance to run effectively.
And the undisputed king of that spiritual voltage in contemporary hoodoo is High John the Conqueror.
Yes. Just the name carries weight. High John the Conqueror.
It really does. What is it exactly?
Botanically, it is Ipomoea lapa, a tuber related to the morning glory family. But in the texts, it is described as the absolute most sacred commanding root available.
So you wouldn't use this for just anything?
No, you do not use High John for minor issues. It imparts mastery, incredible strength, and the ability to smash through insurmountable obstacles.
The heavy artillery of the practice.
Precisely.
The sources contrast High John with Southern John, also known as Dixie John, which is the trillium root.
Right.
If High John is for conquering the world, Southern John is used for conquering the heart. It is geared toward domestic tranquility, family matters, and affection.
But whether you're working with High John, Southern John, or a handful of mojo beans, they usually end up inside a mojo bag.
Which is sort of the physical engine of conjure.
Yes, exactly.
The texts are incredibly specific about how to build one. You don't just dump roots into a sack.
Oh, no. It's a very deliberate process.
Right. You combine your botanicals, almost always in odd numbers, like 3, 7, or 9, inside a small square of red flannel. Then you tie it closed with thread, effectively trapping the magic inside.
But the critical mechanism is that you have to feed it.
Right, like charging your spiritual smartphone. If you don't plug it in, the battery dies.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. So you feed the bag with whiskey or rum or a specific scent like Hoyt's cologne once a week.
And this brings us all the way back to the animistic roots of the practice.
How so?
Well, when you combine those odd-numbered roots, tie that flannel, and recite your psalms over it, you're not just making a lucky charm.
What are you making?
You are synthesizing a new, living, spiritual entity. The bag is alive.
Oh, wow. So when you sprinkle whiskey on it, you aren't just keeping it damp.
No, you are offering literal sustenance. You are providing fuel to the living spirit you just drafted into your service.
And if you don't feed it...
If you do not feed the bag, the acid depletes. The spirit either starves, falls asleep, or simply abandons the work.
So the practitioner is in a constant, active relationship with the botanicals they carry. You are literally carrying a living ecosystem in your pocket that requires your care, just as it cares for you. The scoop of what we've covered today is just staggering. I mean, we started at the front porch, sweeping away malice with sorghum.
We brewed cherry bark and horehound to turn the body into a fortress against illness.
We watched simple agricultural beans transform into compound interest, and we saw how knotweed was weaponized to hold fractured families together against impossible odds.
And finally, we saw the raw, living power of High John the Conqueror breathing life into the flannel of a mojo bag. It is a masterclass in utilizing the environment.
It really is.
And it leaves us with something profound to consider, I think. We didn't even touch on Spanish moss today.
Oh, Spanish moss.
Yeah. If you look at the American South, Spanish moss, Tillandsia, usneoides, drapes over everything.
Right, it hangs from all the trees.
Exactly. It hangs in the air, absorbing its nutrients directly from the atmosphere, completely bypassing the soil.
Okay.
Historically, practitioners noticed this signature and used Spanish moss to stuff healing poppets or hung it in homes to absorb ambient negativity right out of the air, just like it absorbs moisture.
Wow. It is taking exactly what the landscape gives you and finding the power hidden inside it.
Precisely.
That is amazing. So the next time you open your kitchen cabinet and look at that spice rack, or the next time you see a weed breaking through the sidewalk.
Remember the centuries of human survival poured into them?
Yes, remember the resilience, the sharp observation, and the brilliant survival tactics poured into those mundane plants. The natural world is listening. You just have to know how to speak its language.
Beautifully said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep looking deeper, and we will see you next time.